This demo is on the access preparation for mandibular molars. For this demo, I will be working on a tooth 4-6. And before we start, I would just like to mention some basic principles we need to remember when working on mandibular molars in general, be it a first molar, a second molar, or even a third molar. First would be the point of entry. If we look at a mandibular molar, you have the central groove. The point of initial entry is always just mesial to the midpoint of the central groove. We avoid positioning right on the middle, and you also avoid hitting your mesial triangular fossa. There is a reason why the point of entry is just mesial to the midpoint of that central groove. The reason for that would be the mandibular molars in general all have a slight mesial, slight mesial inclination in the oral cavity. And also, when you direct your burr just mesial to the midpoint of the central groove and you position the burr just on a slight angle, you want to direct that burr towards the distal aspect, which is the area where you have a bigger part of your chamber. At the same time, you have the bigger root, which is your distal root, whether it be having 1, 2, or even more canals. When you position your burr on the mesial aspect with that slight angulation toward the distal, you also avoid perforating or thinning out the mesial aspect. Because if you direct the burr on the mesial side and then it is parallel to that long axis, there's a very big chance you would perforate the mesial aspect. So again, please remember that during initial entry of a burr, you always direct it from the mesial, slightly angled. Your aim is the distal aspect of that tooth. Let's start the access using a medium-sized round burr. For posterior, you have the choice of using a number 4 or a number 6 round burr. But I always prefer to stay with the medium-sized or the number 4 round burr. So again, point of initial entry is just mesial to your central groove. Notice I'm avoiding the triangular fossa, but my burr is slightly directed going toward the distal. So you do a touch and go motion as you enter. Now, to avoid friction with the burr, you can slightly just widen, but you are not doing any, or you're not making any outline form. So just make sure that you are entering and going or directing your burr distally. So I'm just widening it a little bit so the burr doesn't have much friction along the walls. To maintain always the position of that burr, you can just slightly make the opening wider again because you want to avoid friction between your tooth surface and your burr. But you have to maintain the point of entry. And as you go deeper, you always want to check with your Endo Explorer, just making sure that you are maintaining that correct angulation. Okay, notice I'm not going straight, it's a slight angle. Okay, and you don't direct it going buccally or going lingually, it is following that middle aspect of that molar. Let's continue. So always, when you do access on molars or just on any tooth, you always have your radiograph, your periapical radiograph that will give you an idea of how deep is your chamber. And also, you just want to know if your chambers are big or wide, or is there an ample distance between the roof of your chamber and the floor of your chamber. So one thing also to remember is the distance of your burr. You know that you're already too deep basing on the height of that burr. So here we're still on a safe distance. And as always, as you enter, you want to, once in a while, okay, check with your you always want to check with the Endo Explorer just to feel if there's an area that somehow your burr now wants to break in. You probe just to give you an idea. Here I believe I'm already very near my chamber. Okay, so let's continue. So you just do a touch and go motion. You do not do a flattening motion. Okay, let's check. Okay. As I said, your probe, as you use your probe, as you use the probe to check your direction, if your roof of your chamber is thin, you'd notice that your probe would want to get in, like what I feel now, and so you know that is where you're going to direct your burr. Okay, so just clean the area first. From there, I'd like to see if the 10 file would go in somewhere. Okay, almost. Always remember to clean using your irrigant, sodium hypochlorite. Even if I have not opened the chamber, I still prefer to use sodium hypochlorite because it really cleans the area very well, and that also improves your visibility. So now let's check again with the Endo Explorer. So I feel on this area it wants to enter, but it's tight. So when you have that, you can always get your number 10 file at your estimated tooth length and see somehow if it wants to enter. So here, notice that the file is going in, but it's tight. So that's telling me I have entered already my chamber. So with that, I just follow where that file went, where I dropped in. So notice it drops in, and with the same motion, just like an access preparation, you start to unroof, still using your round burr. So we continue to unroof. Again, it's always an outward motion, just where you entered. Now, notice the entry was on the distal aspect. So, since you enter the distal aspect, locating that distal canal or canals, now you're going to unroof going toward the mesial. Because now you'd like to expose your chamber on the mesial aspect. So you can locate your mesial roots. So here, my motion is outward. Again, do not go deeper than that drop because you don't want to touch the floor of your chamber. So any area where you feel an undercut, you move in and just do that outward brushing or burring out motion. Let's irrigate this first. Again, a point to remember, when you do access prep, especially on posteriors, you don't need too much water spray. You just need enough to moisten the tooth. Why? Because as you open your chamber, those dentinal debris or shavings would usually pack into those orifices, and that would help you locate your orifices. And also, if you flood the area too much with water, then you decrease your visibility of the area. So we continue to unroof. Again, it's always an outward motion, just where you entered. Now, notice the entry was on the distal aspect. So, since you enter the distal aspect, locating that distal canal or canals, now you're going to unroof going toward the mesial. Because now you'd like to expose your chamber on the mesial aspect. So you can locate your mesial roots. So here, my motion is outward. Again, do not go deeper than that drop because you don't want to touch the floor of your chamber. So any area where you feel an undercut, you move in and just do that outward brushing or burring out motion. Let's irrigate this first. Again, a point to remember, when you do access prep, especially on posteriors, you don't need too much water spray. You just need enough to moisten the tooth. Why? Because as you open your chamber, those dentinal debris or shavings would usually pack into those orifices, and that would help you locate your orifices. And also, if you flood the area too much with water, then you decrease your visibility of the area. As you unroof, you can always get your number 10 file and see if it would like to, or if it can enter another canal. So here, As we unroof, as I said, going mesially. Okay, so again, we was able to enter on the distal. Okay, now we are checking towards the mesial if it can go in. So there's a part here where it wants to go in also. Okay, so that's a guide where we are able now to locate another entry or another canal. So again, continue still unroofing until you completely remove the roof of the chamber. So I'm still on the round burr. I am widening any areas where the round burr wants to catch. Again, as I said, don't go deeper than where you felt that drop. So you do not hit. So you do not hit on your floor. As you unroof, always check with the Endo Explorer again to see possible entries to another canal. So let's see this. A while ago, it wanted to enter on a meshobuccal side. Okay, let's see if it goes into another. On the mesolingual side. Okay, let's remove. So let's locate the I believe this is the meshobuccal orifice, but there's still tooth structure over it. But at least we know that we have located the meshobuccal orifice to the meshobuccal canal. Now we go to locating the mesolingual. Okay, so if that's here on the buccal side, if we know there is one canal towards the buccal, then there must be another canal on the mesolingual side or on the lingual side. So here, after unroofing and probing, notice that the number 10 file goes into this area, just on the meshobuccal corner, and that's the meshobuccal canal. So I hope you see that. So you always check after unroofing and probing with your Explorer if your number 10 file goes into an orifice. Now let's check the mesolingual canal. Why do we suspect a mesolingual canal? Because your file is on the buccal side, the buccal half, and that tells you you must have another canal on the lingual. Because if you had only one canal, that file will be right on the middle. Unlike here, it's on the corner of your meshobuccal side. Since I clearly located the meshobuccal orifice and canal, I still want to flare and open my walls so the orifices are clearer. I will check on the mesolingual after I widen these walls. So here I am using a safe end burr. So I'm using this so I can flare out the walls. Because if you notice, it's able to enter the orifice, but you don't see the entry clearly. You still have undercuts. Okay, so let's check again. So let's irrigate first the area, clean it first, so we can locate the mesolingual. So after flaring the walls and locating the mesobuccal, so this is the mesobuccal. So after widening and flaring or diverging the walls, it's able to enter easier on the mesobuccal. So now we locate the mesolingual. Okay, so notice it's entering now toward the mesolingual corner. So that's the mesolingual, and this one here goes to the mesobuccal area. Okay, so here after flaring or widening the walls, you now are able to locate your two mesial canals, the mesobuccal and the mesolingual. But notice they are not upright. It goes on a slant. So we still need to check what areas of the walls still has to be opened up, diverged, or flared. We continue to open the walls until you're able to directly see the orifices. The orifices should not be, I should say, hiding under the walls. You should be able to see the orifices clearly, so that you don't guess where your entry to the canals are. So notice, I'm just widening it enough to the point where I see the orifices directly. Okay, as I said, you don't want to mutilate the tooth. So again, let's check this. Irrigating again, cleaning the area again. Notice I'm not using the air spray. You never use your air spray again. Okay, so even if you're working on the non-vital tooth, I mean a cadaver tooth, get used to using the irrigant. Because on an actual patient, you never air spray once your chambers are open. So a while ago, we located the mesobuccal. Now we see if our file goes easier to the mesolingual. Okay, so that's the mesolingual area. That's the mesolingual area. Okay, so mesobuccal located, Mesolingual, easy to enter into the almost to the working length. Now let's go to the distal. After we open up the walls, I just turn this so it's more convenient. So now let's check the distal, if we're able to enter more your distal canals. Always check with your explorer, because your explorer would usually want just to enter. Okay, so let's see now if this wants to enter a distal canal or orifice. Okay, so here it's able to enter. Okay, just turn that. So it's going to the distal, and you guide your file in. Okay, so it enters going toward the distal lingual corner. This is the buccal side, right? Lingual. So it's on the distal lingual corner. That means it's able to enter to the estimate working length. So now we're going to go and look for the distal buccal canal. Okay, so after we do that, we get again the Endo Explorer, and from that part where we had the distal lingual, we probe and go to the distal buccal side and try to look for that fourth canal. So we've located 3 canals so far: mesobuccal, mesolingual, distal lingual, and let's look for the distal buccal canal. Okay, so it's a little tight there, but it does go in. So once your file does not want to go in easily, never force in. Just do a watch wind a little. Do not force. Okay, it's a watch winding. If it doesn't want to enter, do not force. Check again where in your access area you would like to adjust. Let's just flare the distal walls better. The purpose of this is that when you look directly, okay, like this, when you look straight on into your access area, you'll be able to see the orifices clearly. So I'm just adjusting the walls so that when I look at it directly, I see the orifices. So this is almost done. We're just doing a little adjustment on the walls. Remember, the rule is always to remove up to your pulp horns. So the form of the access prep really depends on how many canals you have. So here, since we located 4 canals, then we have a rectangular form. So I'm just adjusting and removing all the pulp horns. And let's see if the files are able to enter also much more convenient. Okay, let's check again. After locating and having access to all canals, what you just need to do now is make sure that you have removed all your pulp horns. So it's good to use the safe end burr like what I'm using. But if you're using a regular Fisher burr, just be very careful you do not touch the floor of your chamber. Okay, so this is already on just completing the access prep, removing any undercuts or pulp horns that are still left. A completed access prep for the mandibular molar should show the orifices directly. So here we have 4 orifices for the mesolingual, mesobuccal, distolingual, and distobuccal. Notice you only make the preparation just to expose and flare out the walls. The marginal ridge is still intact, and the pulp horns, okay, all pulp horns are removed. And if you look at the dentinal map, okay, you still have the form of your dentinal map, okay, and you don't flatten the floor of your chamber, so it's still curved, so you don't touch that at any time during your preparation. And when you look directly, okay, straight on to the access area, you should be able to see your orifices directly. If at any point you look straight on into your access prep and an orifice is not seen on that direct approach, then you need to flare out or diverge or check the walls of that area. So here we have a rectangular form for the access prep, still conservative on the distal side if you notice, and just enough to expose and flare out the walls. Okay, so that is your completed access prep for a mandibular molar.